Welcome to the F around and find out presidency. No, seriously, that is how Donald Trump is billing it, posting this AI-generated image of it essentially means President Trump is telling the world and lawmakers here at home, try me. Colombia got it over the weekend when the president announced a 25% tariff and visa restrictions on Bogota when leaders there refused a U.S. military plane full of deported immigrants. Colombian President Gustavo Petro quickly backed down, notching a win for Donald Trump.
You say you want to match them dollar for dollar. If there are counter tariffs, that money is going to come out of Canadians' pockets. How do you justify that additional pain to Canadians?
Two ways you justify it. First of all, for Trump, weakness is a provocation. And with him, capitulation is not a negotiating strategy. Like, you may think, come on, let's just be reasonable. Let's say to him how great we are, what good friends we are, and we can preserve this mutually beneficial relationship. It's a win-win today. We can get him to see that. I think ultimately we're going to get there for sure. But the reality is that's not how he rolls. He wants to beat you up and push you as far as he can. So it is so essential that we say to him really clearly, Canada is not for sale. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. We take you seriously, but we are not afraid of you. And if you hit us, we will hit back. You make an excellent point about the challenges for Canadians. And that's why it's important to remember retaliatory tariffs generate revenue. And that money
from Canadians.
Yeah, but that money needs to be plowed right back into the Canadian economy, into the pocketbooks of Canadian families, and to support Canadian businesses. So that's what we need to do.
I do find it quite ironic that Mark Carney is portraying himself as an outsider, yet he's got most of the votes of the inside cabinet. And then Chrystia Freeland is running on the anti-establishment platform, yet she was the establishment for the past 12 years. So if these are the things that they're testing out within their own ranks for the Canadian public, I think that they should reconsider what their narratives are going to be, because they're really not going to fly.
Can I go back to you and the change that you're saying you represent? You told my colleague Catherine Cullen on the House this weekend that you were running against the Ottawa establishment. Help me understand this, because until very recently, you were the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. How are you not the Ottawa establishment?
Well, look, Matt, I think that it is pretty clear that the Ottawa elites today, that I am not their preferred candidate. And I get that. I understand why, for the Prime Minister and the people the closest to him, that they would feel that way. The fact is, though, that today what we need is to be listening to the grassroots, that we need to be listening to Liberal Party members. One of the things we've allowed to have happen is for the Liberal Party itself to atrophy and for the grassroots not to have control of the party. Something that I will do if I am chosen as leader is give that control back to the grassroots and say, you have to have the grassroots decide how they want to exercise that control. But the first thing I would do is say to the grassroots members, you guys figure out how you want to speak truth to power. You guys figure out what kind of a leadership review mechanism you want to have. I think if we had had that in place, we would be in a much better position today than we are now.
Just to be clear, you don't see yourself as part of the Ottawa elite. You were the Deputy Prime Minister. You were the Finance Minister. You held some of the highest positions in government.
I'm really glad to welcome Mark here to our cabinet retreat. He is a real addition to our team. Mark is a friend of a personal friend of very long standing. He's someone who I talk to often and whom I've talked to often about economic policy since becoming finance minister. It's really great for our team to have Mark providing advice to the Liberal Party so that we can support Canada and Canadians.
Mark Carney remains far ahead with his fellow MPs, not with his fellow MPs, with Liberal MPs, with 56 supporters. Chrystia Freeland has 26, and Karina Gould has 2. I'm joined now by the latest cabinet minister to endorse Mark Carney, and that is Mark Miller. He is the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Why are you endorsing Mark Carney? Why are you getting on board this particular campaign?
Look, I think he's the right man for the job. We could go through his resume. We don't have to. His CV is probably unequaled in terms of its quality in Canada. What he's done on the world stage is well known. What he's able to do for Canada is well known. But for me, I was joking, he's a goalie like me, but it's about the intangibles. He gives us a shot at beating Pierre Poilievre. I think that's important, given the toxic rhetoric coming out of Pierre's mouth on a daily basis. But it's about issues that I cared about, David. Obviously, the economy. I don't think we have to be dogmatic to what we've done for the last 9 years. We have to be able to look at some fresh air coming in and some new ideas, but also matters that matter to Canada and to me: reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, right. The environment. Those are things that I think are very important for our party, are very important for Canadians and the next generation. So we had some good talks and chats together. I wanted to understand that he's a regular guy. You can have a chat with him. Someone of that quality, you sometimes have difficulty talking to him or having a real conversation. You can have a real conversation with the guy. So that gave me confidence, and it did take, obviously with the Prime Minister leaving, it took some time and some reflection to think about where I would put my support, and it's with Mark Carney.
Mr. Carney, sorry. Mr. Carney, why are you lying to Canadians saying that you are an outsider when you're the ultimate insider? Why are you lying to Canadians?
Je ne suis jamais un député, madame. Alors,
you are the special advisor to Trudeau.
Pourquoi tu parles anglais à Shawinigan?
Because we are an English news outlet, and you know it. But why are you lying to Canadians saying that you're an outsider? When you return as a Prime Minister, are you going to cut ties with the World Economic Forum?
J'en ai pas.
You have been invited multiple times.
He seems to have the majority caucus, majority of cabinet, even though Chrystia Freeland was the Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. And she has, in multiple interviews now, suggested that the Liberal establishment and the Prime Minister's office are lining up behind Mark Carney. I know you're a longtime friend of Justin Trudeau's. I mean, what do you say to these allegations coming from Chrystia Freeland that the PMO and the party elite are driving this?
Well, I think we need to rally a majority of Canadians. Anyone that's in Parliament, whether they're with the Liberal Party or any other party, for an outsider is seen as the establishment. I won't talk about any of that silliness. We can't be fractious as a party. We need to come out united as a party. We need to get a majority of Canadians and not a majority of caucus for the next election, and that, I think, is the focus. If we go into the next election or come out of this leadership race not unified or as fractious as we went into it, it's not going to bode well in the next election, and Canadians will see that. So I need to see a positive message from all candidates. I've heard that from Mark, and I want to hear a debate of ideas, and I'm putting my weight behind Mark Carney. I think when it comes to choices, you have to make a choice in politics, and for me, it's Mark.
This whole discussion is devoid of policy at the moment. I don't know what the cabinet ministers are looking at when they say Mark Carney's our guy, because he hasn't come out with any policy at all. He's come out with a slick commercial. He's talked about building, pretty middle-of-the-road pablum-y kind of stuff. Chrystia Freeland's got a few things that she's come out with, but people are making really big decisions. It's all about the sizzle and not about the steak. So if you're not going to have policy disagreements within the party, it may be a little bit easier for them to get along at the end of the day.
I mean, he does fare better than Chrystia Freeland in some polls, but it's still a wide gap. That looks like a Prime Minister Poilievre at the end of it with a big Conservative majority. So what is it that he can do, in your view, in the time you have until Election Day to change that?
I see Mark in complete contrast to a guy like Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre has never even put through a piece of legislation through Parliament, and Mark Carney has a resume that speaks for itself. I think that makes them scared. I take more comfort in seeing what Mark is bringing to the table and to our party and to help build it. Certainly this is his first foray into elected politics, so he'll be challenged on a lot of fronts, but I think he's certainly up to it.
Do you worry about that, though? Never having run for anything and wanting to immediately come in? Like, Prime Minister's not an entry-level job, and that's where he's going to start, right? So are you worried about his ability to run a campaign, having never done anything like that before?
Look, he has several decades of experience in the private sector. That's something the alternative, Pierre Poilievre, hasn't done for even 1 year. It is difficult to be in politics, but I see all the skill set there, particularly in a guy that's willing to learn, at least through the conversations that I've had. And, speaking from experience, never underestimate a goalie.